Good morning everyone, it's Peter with the Garden Family. It is June 8th and I'm here in my Southwest Ohio Zone 6B garden. Today I'm just going to show you around and let you see how everything is growing. So come on in. All right, we are here in the pepper bed and you can see if you compare this shot from 1 month ago, we've had great growth with the peppers. In fact, one of the things you're going to see throughout this little tour is the month of May was very warm for us, and that has meant really good growth on a lot of the warm weather plants. So here in the pepper bed, I am just so impressed by how the peppers are doing. This has been by far the best year for peppers that we've had. And let me show you a few of the peppers that I'm so excited about. So these ones right here in the foreground, these are Jimmy Nardello peppers, and they have a really thin walled pepper. They're great for sort of a frying pepper. They're super sweet. They'll turn red when they're ripe. You can just see how loaded these little plants are. And this Mellow Star shishito pepper we looked at last month, and since then, just a huge amount of pepper growth. A lot of them are sort of hiding in here, but these shishitos are super tasty. We had them at a restaurant actually. Loved them so much we decided to grow them ourselves, and they are just as good or better at home. As we transition into summer, one of the things we're going to be looking for are new pests that show up. We're kind of in the honeymoon phase of the garden. We're just about to enter a period where pest pressure and disease pressure increase. And one of those pests is right here. It is a Japanese beetle. Let me catch it and show you what they look like. So Japanese beetles, they come and they just sort of defoliate a lot of plants. They aren't one plant specific. They'll show up, they'll eat a ton of things, including some of your fruit plants like raspberries. We really don't like these things. You can use a lure trap to trap some of them. Actually, they weren't too bad last year, so we'll see how they are this year. Another pest we've been dealing with significantly more than previous years are slugs. Part of it may have been that we brought in so many nice wood chips for them to live in. But I've also heard from other gardeners that this year just in particular has been really bad for slugs. Luckily we're just getting out of slug season, but they've been pretty difficult to deal with. And I actually got some iron phosphate for the first time, a little slug bait to try to deal with them because they killed so many seedlings. Well, here we are at the eggplant. We grew 5 varieties, and wow, I am just incredibly impressed by the amount of growth these have had in 1 month. These plants are huge and doing incredibly well. And in fact, we have some harvestable eggplant, so I'll bring you up a little closer so we can look at those. So this variety is called Orient Express. It has the sort of Japanese style eggplant, and you can see a few ready to harvest in here. Really love this plant just from a beauty perspective too. These big tropical looking leaves with purple webbing in here. It's really striking. Now this variety here is called White Knight. The plant itself is a little bit smaller than the other plants, but it's incredibly prolific. If we look underneath here, just how many white eggplant there are down here. Well, I think we could say the tomatillos have grown a bit in the 1 month since they've been in the ground. But one of the things about them that I'm finally excited about is if we look right over here, they look like little Chinese lanterns. Super pretty. We finally have fruit. I was worried because they were just so huge, had so many flowers, and we weren't getting any pollination. But that's finally happened. So we're going to be enjoying salsa verde pretty soon. All right, here we are in the indeterminate tomato tower. We can see from our previous video that we've had really good growth on the tomatoes. And just like I said last time, we made this structure to single stem all 12 of the indeterminate tomato plants that we have. And we like it a lot more than string trellising just because we do get a decent amount of wind. And I noticed when we were doing the string trellising in the past that we get a lot of damage to the plants. Speaking of wind, I'll show you what happened to one of the plants and what I did to fix it. So one of the things you probably noticed about this tomato here, it's got a bandage on it. This is a Brandy Boy tomato. It's a beautiful looking plant with a lot of good tomatoes on it. But in a storm that we had, it had a big branch here that not only broke, but also when it broke, tore along the main stem. I was kind of keeping an eye on it to see how it healed, but water was going down into that wound. So I put some parafilm on it, and now it looks like it's healing well. A few of the other varieties we're excited about. These are pink Berkeley tie-dye. Look how pretty those tomatoes look. We're having a nice, cool week this week. I'm really excited about that because we should get really good fruit set. It's just about the right time to start getting those fruit to grow here. Tomatoes really like to set fruit more in the 70-degree-ish high temperatures. Once you get into the high 80s, they tend to not actually set fruit. And so it's nice to have these cooler weeks in June so that we can get a lot of fruit set for all those ripe tomatoes in July. All right, into our determinate paste tomatoes that we grow in straw bales. Remember at the previous video, we hadn't even planted these yet. So these are less than 1 month old and they are doing great. You can see just how much growth they have. The color is really good and we're actually starting to get some small tomatoes on here. It's gonna be another bumper crop of paste tomatoes. Much to Hilary's chagrin, we are going to be working pretty hard to get all of these canned so we can enjoy pizza sauce and other tomato sauces throughout the winter. One of the things you might have noticed that's different from before is you don't really see the straw bales anymore. You see a lot of wood chips. One of the things I'm doing this year is I basically mounded all of these wood chips up against the straw. That's to prevent moisture loss from the sides of the straw bales. The one challenge with straw bales is as we get into the heat of summer, we tend to lose a lot of moisture and need a lot of extra watering, so we're trying to minimize that. This bed over here is quickly becoming one of my favorites in the garden. We have our cattle panel trellises that we've been training our butternut squash up. We also have our celery, which is our first year growing it. It really looks amazing. The other thing in this bed, we have bulb fennel, which we probably should have harvested already. And then farther back on different cattle panels, we have our cucumbers. So here's a little tip as far as training your vining plants up the cattle panels. Even though a lot of these plants are natural climbers and they will climb on their own, they tend to get kind of all over the place and they do need a little bit of help in my opinion. So an easy way to do that is I use these Velcro ties, and basically what I'm going to do is find a vine that's starting to kind of go where I don't want it. So for example this one, I'd rather have this one climb kind of up the edge there, and I'm just going to take it, get this Velcro tie, put it around, and then tie it to that location. The nice thing about this is that because they're natural climbers, you only need a couple of ties per vine. And then as this goes up, you just keep moving that Velcro tie higher and higher. And that way you get pretty even growth up your cattle panels. All right, back here in the potato bed, these are in-ground beds. And I'm doing an experiment. If you remember, this side is actually I tilled and then added compost. And then on this side, I did not till, I just added compost directly to the top, so a no-till bed. I was really hoping the no-till bed would do just as well or better than the tilled bed, because obviously tilling takes a lot of energy, but unfortunately it does look like the tilled bed is doing significantly better. I'll follow up with another video with the actual harvest so we can see what the yield is between the two. So you can see in this wider angle shot, this is the tilled area, this is the no-tilled area. But another thing I wanted to talk about was our tomato towers. So we make these 8-foot tall cages out of cattle panels. It's 2 pieces that inset together. What's nice is at the end of the season, you can take them apart and store them really efficiently that way. If you remember before, we had just planted these in that early May video, and I have 3 plants. These are all cherry tomatoes. So we have a super sweet 100, a green bee, and then our last one is a sun gold tomato. So one of the things we're doing with these in these towers, the one challenge with the towers is they don't get wider as they get taller, kind of like those traditional tomato cages that you have. And as you can see, what happens is as the plant gets bigger, it tries to widen out. So as a solution to that problem, what I like to do is take these leaders, and as we get to about this point, I start removing all of the additional branches, sometimes called suckers, and I'm actually going to sort of single stem them up the different panels on of these. So they'll just be coming up. Once we get to the top, that's when I'll just kind of let it balloon out like a tree canopy. So back in the berry patch, the blueberries are doing well, just mostly vegetative growth, although we did harvest just a few blueberries recently. But the raspberries that we planted last year from bare roots are really doing well. You can see just how much growth they have. We've been harvesting a ton of raspberries. All of our raspberries are what are called primocane bearing or ever-bearing raspberries, meaning they can fruit both on the growth that comes this year, and you get that fruit in the fall, and also on the growth that came last year, and you get that fruit in the midsummer. So right now, the growth that came last year is fruiting. This is a variety called Double Gold, and it has these sort of golden pink raspberries. They are incredibly tasty, and they are fruiting on last year's wood, which is called floricanes. While growing raspberries is super easy, and it's a fruit that I think everyone should grow, sometimes the growth habit and the pruning is a little bit confusing. So I made a video recently about how to do that. Check it out if you have any questions. Over here in the strawberry patch, we have 2 4x24 foot rows of strawberries, and we planted them this spring. They are doing great. A lot of the plants have really good growth. We actually let them make strawberries this year, even though many people advise to wait until next year. So just some of the bigger plants, we let them have flowers and make us some strawberries. Some of these smaller ones that are a little bit closer to me over here, we cut those flowers off just to allow the plant to establish a little bit better. So the next phase in developing our strawberry patch is controlling the location of these runners. You can see the plants are making a bunch of new strawberry plants, and these little plants will develop roots from the bottom of the plants. But right now they're pretty movable, so basically what you want to do is kind of move them around your patch to kind of fill in empty areas, and then remove any runners that are not useful in filling out your strawberry patch. So far the onions are all doing really well despite the significantly closer spacing that we're trying this year. Our goal with the closer spacing is to get more onions that are a medium size rather than just a few extremely large onions. From a utility perspective, onions are probably one of our favorite things to grow just because they are used in so many meals, they can store for so long, and you get quite a lot of onion in a relatively small space. Exciting time, the garlic looks like we're just about ready to harvest. We will probably harvest the half closest to me this weekend. In fact, let's pull one up right now and see what they're looking like. Well, takes a little effort, so that's a good sign. That looks beautiful. Out here in the cauliflower and broccoli area, you can see we're about done with the season here. We did allow the broccoli to go to flower. The pollinators really love it. And the big question is, what do we do with these beds next? You got a few options of what you could follow your brassicas with. One of the things that we are going to do is chop all these down to the ground, leave the roots in place, and then I'm going to direct sow zucchini and other summer squash in these and put on netting over the top of these hoops. That way, if our other zucchini we're about to look at eventually die from squash vine borer, we will have another set ready to go. Other great crops to follow after harvesting broccoli or cauliflower, one would be bush green beans. That's a great one because it will add some nitrogen back into your soil. And broccoli and cauliflower are pretty heavy feeders. And in our area, we actually do have a long enough season that you could also transplant tomatoes. Often determinate tomatoes would be a better option than indeterminate, as another great follow-on to brassicas. Over here with the zucchini, this variety is called Golden Glory, and it just produces these beautiful yellow zucchini. We've grown other yellow summer squash in the past, such as crookneck squash. I really didn't like it as much, and so far we're much happier with this yellow zucchini than a traditional yellow summer squash. As we just talked about, these plants are looking amazing, but they are unprotected, and in our area I do expect them to get attacked by squash vine borer, and I probably have about a month or so of harvest here before they die from that. I have a strategy, as we just talked about, by planting another planting under cover, and I'll talk about that in detail in another video. I've already made that video, so I'll place a link to that so you can see it. One of our goals this year was to add more flowers, both for the beauty of the garden and for the pollinators. And you can see a few of the ones that we picked that are doing actually pretty well. I'm not so much a flower gardener, but I'm learning. And one of the things you're going to see in the foreground, we have all of these foxgloves. And surprisingly, we're actually getting flowers the first year. These will really come back strong next year and be a ton of flowers, and then self-seed usually that year. Also, I'm just really loving these snapdragons here. Just absolutely beautiful color. Really easy to grow plants, so really happy with the choice here. Another one of our favorite flowers, Cleome. They are annuals, but they do self-seed prolifically. So my idea here is we planted a few of them that we started from seed indoors. And in the future, I do expect them to self-seed and kind of take over this area, which is towards the front entrance of the garden. Behind me, you can also see this is our pole bean tower, a good 9 feet tall or so, and we're starting to get the pole beans that we directly sowed climbing up there. In last month's video, we talked a little bit about this low-lying area of the garden that's sort of this straw bale hugelkultur area, and I hadn't done too much with it yet, so let me show you what we've planted down here. The idea of the garden is we're utilizing a space that otherwise isn't that great for growing because it's a low-lying area of the garden, and planting a lot of sprawling vining crops in straw bales. So for example, we have these watermelon that are just sort of sprawling around. These have been in the ground for less than a month and are doing great. We also have our other melons, cantaloupe and other melons. We have blue Hubbard squash as well as Long Island cheese pumpkins. And we also have our sweet potatoes that we love growing in straw bales. These take up a lot of space to make huge vines, and that's how you get a great harvest of sweet potatoes. Now, there's not a whole lot to see with the orchard right now, but I am just so excited about the future here because we have over 20 different varieties of fruit trees, all at about 10-foot spacing here within the boundary of the garden. So far, all of the bare root trees that we planted this spring are doing really well, and I can't wait to show you how those do over the coming years. Well, that's going to wrap up our June tour of the garden. Hopefully you enjoyed the walk around. I'll try to do another video update in about a month in early July. As we've walked around, if you've had any questions that come up, go ahead and ask them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button down there. And if you like this type of content and you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to our channel. I hope you all are enjoying this gardening season as much as I am. Happy gardening, everyone.